boy stood frozen beside the hospital bed, his small hands clenched, his eyes fixed on the old man who lay perfectly still. Machines hummed softly. The room smelled of disinfectant and fear. The boy leaned closer and whispered something so honest, so unexpected, that the man pretending to sleep felt his chest tighten and his breath nearly give him away. Before we go any further, if stories about kindness, quiet courage, and unexpected human connection move you the way they move us, you're in the right place. Subscribe to Kindness Tales. Tap like if this story touches you, and share your thoughts in the comments as we go along. Now let me tell you how this moment came to be. The man in the hospital bed was known across the country as one of the richest businessmen alive. His name filled headlines, his companies shaped skylines, and his face appeared on magazine covers, smiling beside words like visionary and ruthless. But behind the glass walls of his downtown tower, he had grown tired. Tired of lawyers who flinched when he frowned. Tired of executives who laughed too loudly. Tired of never knowing whether the kindness shown to him was real or purchased. That exhaustion followed him even into the private wing of the hospital, where he had checked himself in for routine tests. The doctors said his heart was strong, but he felt something hollow where certainty used to live. On his second night there, as rain tapped against the window and the city lights blurred, he noticed a janitor quietly mopping the hallway outside his door. The man worked slowly, carefully, as if every movement mattered. The janitor came every night around the same time. He was middle-aged with worn sneakers and a gentle nod for anyone who passed. Sometimes during short breaks, he sat on a bench near the vending machines and talked softly on his phone. The billionaire didn't mean to listen, but the hallway carried sound. He heard the janitor asking about homework, reminding someone to eat dinner, apologizing for being late again. There was warmth in his voice that felt unfamiliar. On the third night, the janitor appeared with a boy. The hospital allowed it since visiting hours were quiet in that wing. The boy couldn't have been more than 12. He wore a faded hoodie and carried a backpack that looked heavier than it should. He sat on the bench, swinging his legs while his father finished his work. When a nurse smiled at him, the boy smiled back with a politeness that felt older than his age. Something about that boy stayed with the billionaire long after they left. Maybe it was the way he helped his father without being asked. Maybe it was the way he looked around the hospital. Curious but respectful, like he understood this place held other people's worries.
The next evening, an idea took shape in the billionaire's mind. It wasn't kind or cruel at first. It was curiosity mixed with loneliness. He asked the head nurse a simple favor. When the janitor and his son came by, he wanted to appear asleep. No interruptions, no explanations, just observe. When they arrived that night, the boy peeked through the open door and saw the old man lying still, eyes closed, chest rising evenly. The room was dim except for the glow of monitors. The janitor hesitated, clearly unsure if they should step inside. The boy tugged gently at his sleeve and whispered that it was okay. They entered quietly. The janitor wiped surfaces with practiced efficiency, careful not to disturb anything. The boy stood near the bed, hands in his pockets, looking at the man as if trying to understand him. He noticed the expensive watch on the bedside table, the flowers delivered that morning, the view of the city from the window. This was a world far from their small apartment and second-hand furniture. As the janitor finished, he motioned for his son to follow him out. The boy took a step, then stopped. He looked at his father and asked if he could have a minute. The janitor hesitated, glanced at the still figure in the bed, then nodded and stepped into the hallway. The billionaire's heart began to beat faster. He hadn't expected this. The boy moved closer to the bed. He didn't touch anything. He just stood there, breathing softly. For a long moment he said nothing. Then he spoke, barely above a whisper, as if afraid to wake the man. He said he hoped the old man wasn't scared. He said hospitals could feel lonely, even when people were around. He said his mom used to be in one like this before she passed, and that sometimes talking helped, even if the person couldn't answer. The billionaire felt his throat tighten. He kept his eyes closed. The boy went on. He said his dad worked very hard and sometimes came home tired and quiet. But he was a good man. He said he tried to help by doing well in school and not asking for much. He said he didn't know why this man was alone, but he hoped someone loved him enough to worry. Then the boy said something that made the billionaire's fingers twitch. Under the blanket, he said that if the man was rich, he hoped he remembered that money couldn't sit with you when you were scared. And if he was poor, he hoped he remembered that being kind still made you rich inside. He said he was going to pray for him, not because he wanted anything, but because everyone deserved that. The boy bowed his head for a few seconds. When he finished, he whispered goodnight and stepped back. His father returned, placed a hand on his shoulder, and they left quietly, the door clicking shut behind them. The room felt different after that. The billionaire lay there, eyes still closed, heart pounding, staring into darkness that felt heavier than before. No one had spoken to him like that in decades. No one had expected nothing in return. The next morning, he couldn't stop thinking about the boy. He asked discreet questions and learned the janitor worked 2 jobs. His wife had died 3 years earlier. The boy came along because there was no one else at home at night. The billionaire cancelled meetings. He watched the hallway that evening with an impatience that surprised him. When they arrived again, he didn't pretend to sleep. He sat up slightly and cleared his throat. The janitor froze, apologizing immediately, pulling his son back. The billionaire raised a hand and told him it was fine. He asked the boy his name. The boy answered politely, eyes wide. The billionaire thanked him for the visit the night before. The boy looked confused, then realized what he meant. His face flushed and he began to apologize. The billionaire stopped him and said the words mattered more than he knew. They talked awkwardly at first, then more easily. The boy spoke about school, about wanting to be an engineer, about helping his dad. The janitor listened quietly, pride and worry mixing in his eyes. For the first time in a long while, the billionaire felt like he was in a room with people who saw him as human, not a symbol. Over the next weeks, small changes followed. The billionaire arranged for the janitor to move to a daytime position with better pay, insisting it was due to performance. He funded a scholarship program at the boys' school, anonymous but targeted. He started spending time volunteering at the hospital, sitting with patients who had no visitors, listening instead of talking. The boy continued to visit sometimes, not because he had to, but because he wanted to. He brought drawings. He brought stories from school. He brought a normalcy that money had never purchased. Years later, when the billionaire finally told the truth about that first night, about pretending to sleep, he admitted something else too. He said he had gone into that hospital thinking he would test a child's character. Instead, the child had tested his. Kindness doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it comes in a whisper beside a hospital bed, from someone with nothing to gain. And sometimes that quiet moment can stop even the most powerful person in the world and remind them what being human really means. Long after the hospital stay ended, the impact remained. The janitor's life became steadier, not because of charity, but because of opportunity. The boy grew into a young man who never forgot that his words once mattered to a stranger. And the billionaire learned to open doors, not just with money, but with presence. Stories like this remind us that kindness doesn't require wealth, status, or perfect timing. It only asks for honesty and a little courage. You never know who is listening or how deeply your words might land. So the next time you feel small or unnoticed, remember that even a quiet prayer or a gentle sentence can change a life. If you've seen or lived a moment like that, share it in the comments. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear.